like to welcome from London Dr. Marcos Papadopoulos, editor-in-chief of Politics First magazine. Welcome, Dr. Marcos. We are so happy to have you in our program for today. Regarding for what we have been discussing with our guests, the mainstream media, and after 1 year of 7th of October, they seem to be accused by joining this genocide against the Gaza Strip because they are doing this misinformation in the Western media. Do you agree with that?
Let me first of all say that the world should hang its head in shame because Israel, for 1 year now, has been allowed to savagely murder over 40,000 Palestinian civilians, including some 14,000 children and some 9,000 women. The world has taken no action against the Israeli state. Indeed, the world has simply allowed the Israelis to carry out what is one of the most heinous of massacres, one of the most heinous of crimes against humanity in modern times. We hear the British government and the French government saying that Israel should refrain from taking further actions against civilians. We hear the British and French governments saying that certain weapons will no longer be supplied to the Israelis. The British and the French are liars. The British and the French, especially the British, have played an instrumental role in Israel's war against the Palestinian people in Gaza. The British have not stopped supplying the Israelis with any weapons whatsoever. The British continue to supply Israel with weapons, with intelligence information, with logistical information to enable the Israelis to continue their horrific, brutal war against Palestinian civilians in Gaza. As regards Western mainstream media, well, let us never forget that Western mainstream media is neither free nor independent. Rather, it is controlled by the Western ruling elites. Thus, for the past year, Western mainstream media has said that the history of West Asia in the context of the Israelis and the Palestinians began on October the 7th of 2023. Well, of course, that is a terrible, terrible lie. The history between the Israelis and the Palestinians goes back to 1948, when Israel was created at the expense of the Palestinian people who number millions and millions were made homeless. And from 1948 onwards, the Israelis began their campaign.
Dr. Marcos, and from your position, how do you interpret or see this approach that the Western media has taken, and it was completely separated from the professionalism in many states that is supposed to be free and has the free of expression? Do you think it's an historical commitment towards Israel that was reflected in the media? What? What is the reason behind that?
Western mainstream media is one of the most potent weapons in the arsenal of the Western ruling elites. When it comes to Israel, for instance, Western mainstream media provides cover for the Israelis. Western mainstream media will spread propaganda, both Israeli propaganda and Western propaganda, to the audiences of the Western world. So, for example, in my country, in Britain, British mainstream media, be it the Guardian newspaper or the Times newspaper or Sky News or Channel 4 News or BBC News, is telling the British public that Israel has, quote, a right to self-defense, that Israel is the heart of democracy and freedom in West Asia, that Israel is an innocent country. And of course, because the average British person is a ignorant, gullible fool, they are believing the propaganda of Western mainstream media and also Israeli propaganda. The average British person knows nothing about the history of the world.
يكفي حول الحقيقة. بس you are the editor-in-chief for this newspaper. Do you have a different approach from this approach that's taken in the Western media as your position editor-in-chief in Politics First magazine?
Well, I should say that my publication ceased broadcasting over 4 years ago, but it should be known again that Western mainstream media distorts the reality on the ground in West Asia. It presents the Israelis as being angelic when, of course, they are not angelic. We all know that, for example, during the war in Syria, the Israelis were assisting both Al Qaeda and ISIS. The Israelis were treating wounded Al Qaeda fighters in Israeli hospitals. And then, when these fighters had recovered from their injuries, the Israelis put them back into Syria to continue their war against the Syrian people. So Britain is not a democracy. Britain is a tyranny and a kleptocracy, as is America. America is a tyranny and a kleptocracy. There is no such thing in America or in Britain as freedom of the press, because the press is neither independent nor free in America or in Britain. It is controlled by the Western ruling elites.
إنها تخضع. Thank you, Dr. Marcus. Thank you so much for being with us, Dr. Marcus, editor-in-chief in